Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right show, brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. So today, obviously, all eyes on the Middle East, Iran, and Israel continuing to exchange hostilities. The Israelis, of course, targeting specific infrastructure within Iran, targeting the IRGC base, further pursuing targets within Iran where the nuclear facilities remain buried deep underground. Number of targets sought out with these bunker-busting bombs that are designed to penetrate down well below the Earth's surface. One of the facilities that was hit over the weekend, just to give you an idea, is multiple stories underground, embedded in a mountain. And one of the things that the experts are saying, military people are saying, it won't be enough just to attack it via the air with specific bombs, but there may require ground commandos to go in and actually take care of it, plant detonations and go in and clear the site out. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be the Israelis. One of the things too, there were reports over the weekend, unconfirmed, of Mossad agents basically going door to door in Tehran looking for key regime figures. Think of this as sort of an assassination hit squad. That is how targeted the Israelis are being, if that is true. By contrast, the Iranians are lobbing basically dumb bombs. I mean, they're able to set basic coordinates, but these are bombs that are hitting Haifa, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and other residential areas within Israel. And I think one of the funniest things that I have seen in a long time come out on social media, because there's all these accounts, and some of them, of course, run by Americans, by Democrats who want to see Israel vanquished. All these accounts that are fluffing up Iran's military prowess. And they're also making excuses for Iran for targeting civilian areas. Okay, so one of these accounts, this one guy out there, posts this video that I don't think he had watched to the end. There was a funny spoof video made some time ago about how Israel is hiding F-35 jets inside residential apartment buildings. And the video is, of course, a spoof, because when you get to the end of the video, and Robbie, you know what I'm talking about. When you get to the end of the video, it shows that in the basement of the building, there's a Star Destroyer, from Star Wars. The whole thing was a joke, a gag, a play on quote unquote Jewish space lasers. Okay. So anyway, the pro-Iranian account, this guy who's got hundreds of thousands of followers, but puts the video out going, look, see? And he was being serious. See, we are, Iran is within its rights to target civilian areas in Tel Aviv, because that's where the Jews are hiding the F-35s, you see. Along with a Star Destroyer. It doesn't get any better, folks. The idiocy out there is spectacular. So, reports last night that have so far proven to be not true, that the Ayatollah of Iran himself was taken out by the regime. Remember, there was some back and forth going on. Trump said he told the Israelis, don't do it. When the question was brought up, should Israel target the supreme leader of Iran, Trump says, no, don't do it. And he gave an interesting press conference. This was on Friday, Saturday, late Friday, early Saturday. He gives a press conference. He says, nope, I'm not going to get into details. I'm not going to get, but I think it's a bad idea. And I told Bibi Netanyahu, don't do it. Now, right now, there's a very important frame for all of us to consider when listening to Donald Trump. Trump is lying through his teeth, particularly when he's talking about Israel. Now, I love Trump. And I further think that him lying about what he thinks should happen with Iran, what he is telling Israel to do or not do with Iran, or any other strategic or operational thing related to this conflict is a good thing. Remember all of the times Trump on the campaign trail would talk about how Obama and Bush and all these other globalist buffoons would always hold a press conference and say, this is exactly what we're going to do. And they never held any cards back. They never had, any deception. Trump is deceiving his enemies. I don't want to hear from Trump understands the threat from Iran. That much is clear. And Trump has used, in my opinion, we'll call it the ruse, or the impression of ongoing negotiations to lull Iran into a false sense of security. The reason Iran was caught, so to speak, with their pantaloons down is because Trump had convinced Iran that everything hinged on this past Sunday's final sixth negotiation session. The Iranians thought that they would have time through the weekend. And of course, as history would have it, they did not. Netanyahu acted before that session, and it went in direct opposition to everything that Trump had said publicly. Well, it's called strategic deception. I don't know what you want to call it, but it's the right thing to do. You got to tell the enemy, nothing's going to happen. Well, now it's keeping the Iranians guessing. And you have all of MAGA pretty much, with some exception, me included, screaming at the top of their lungs. Look at the aircraft carriers moving to the Middle East. Look at the tankers, the U.S.-based military aircraft that are being repositioned from all across the United States, heading toward the Middle East. Look at that. We're starting World War III. Meanwhile, the Iranians see this and they are literally crapping their pants because they don't know what's coming. And everything Trump is saying, I had a stern talk with Netanyahu. I don't like that. And no, I don't want to target the Ayatollah. I want the Ayatollah. I want the Iranians to think that Trump is holding Bibi Netanyahu back. To whom does that give power? If Iran and every other hostile actor in the Middle East believes that the U.S. is the one just barely holding on to the choke chain, pulling the Israelis back from unleashing full hell, and at the same time, out of the corner, they're either observing American assets getting moved to the region, what do you think that's going to compel them to do? Well, negotiate. Trump is a negotiator. You don't just negotiate by talking, you negotiate by doing and putting yourself in the best possible position to do so. Now, the outcome I want to see is the complete and total destruction of the Islamist Republic. I'd love to see the new Shah installed as the leader of Iran. I'd like to see freedom in some context returned back to the Iranian people. I want to see that country liberated and rid of their mullahs and Islamic overlords. All of that sounds great to me. But first and foremost is meeting the mission, achieving the objective, which is to de-nuke Iran. And to that end, if it can be achieved by bringing the Iranian Ayatollahs to the mat, getting them to negotiate, getting them to negotiate because you have struck the fear of God in their hearts that this is over and it's curtains for the regime, and that is a good thing. And if it means in the end you just provide some smoke, some haze, some obstruction and cover for the Israelis to finish the job, well then so be it. That is good too. Quick break. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. I'll connect all this up for you, along with reactions from people and how this is all being perceived. A lot of these takes, folks, are just plain wrong, if you ask me. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Sam at whatsrightshow.com is my email. And of course, on X, where each and every one of you should be as well, you can find me at What's Right Sam. So for my part, woke up this morning and got the news that the Maccabee Games, the Jewish Olympics, have been postponed for a year, pushed back to the summer to July of 2026. This is sad news in our household because my son, Daniel, was scheduled to play next month in Israel for Team USA 18U water polo. He was the team goalie. So he was very excited to go. I was excited. I think I may have mentioned here a couple times that we had that trip planned. So that is now off the books. So hopefully next summer, I was telling people today that maybe by next summer, we'll be able to visit Tehran. It is more likely than not that in the next 12 months, the Iranian regime collapses. Now, I don't want to engage in too wishful of thinking here on the What's Right show. I'm just saying it's within the realm of possibility. And it takes me to an important question that I think a lot of people are asking. How is it stacking up? And what do I make of all the different, and I asked this myself, what do I make of all these different assessments about how this war is going? And I'm calling it a war because there's kinetic fighting occurring as we speak between two, well-armed nations. So I don't know what call it, whatever it is. It's a war. So how's it going to work out? Now, first of all, you realize that on both sides, there are tremendous biases that are obstructing the correct information making its way out. And it's frustrating because I wish, and I honest to goodness, I haven't found, maybe a couple of channels I'm still vetting, but I haven't found a really good source. People have really strong, deep-seated views on the topic of Israel, and particularly now. And it used to be that I could trust, generally speaking, conservative Americans. I could look to people that I respected on, where I had alignment with them on, let's say, 95% of things out there. And I could go to them. I said, okay, well, what do you think here? What's your sense of how this is going? And that I kind of has gone out the window. But oddly, I think, and so there's a lot of people that are downplaying and are being very less than optimistic about Israel's chances. I think it's wishful thinking on their part. Then there are a lot of people who are being overly optimistic about Israel, and I think that's wishful thinking on their part too. So I have spent, much to my family's chagrin, pretty much 70% of my waking time this past weekend, frankly, ever since this thing broke out, on Twitter, on the news, digesting different sources. And here's my sort of my high-level take on everything. I think I give the edge to Israel. And I give the edge to Israel because for the first time in ever, there is alignment behind Israel. Iran has, first of all, Iran has lost control of its proxies. If you look at the last active bunch of them are the Houthis. And the Houthis got spanked by Trump and are regrouping to some extent. They're still very dangerous. They're kind of removed, right? They're in Yemen. But the proxies that were, right inside or next to Israel, Hamas, of course, in Gaza, severely degraded. Nobody's going to argue about that. Hezbollah, pretty much every, significant leader within Hezbollah is walking around with a stump or a bandaged leg, has lost one or both of his testes. I mean, they ain't looking so good, if you catch my drift. After the pager attack, Hezbollah's been decimated. Syria, Bashar al-Assad regime, he's in Moscow somewhere, being a house husband. His wife is divorcing him. I mean, Jelani isn't a walk in the park, but if the reports are accurate and Jelani is no friend of Tehran, Syria no longer a reliable partner of the Iranian regime, a neighbor of Israel. So, and then let's get to the kind of, we'll call them friendlies, like real friendlies. MBS, I realize he chopped up Khashoggi and Biden was getting the vapors over shaking hands with him, but the head of Saudi Arabia has called the Ayatollah Hitler. Like, he has called, the head of Saudi Arabia says about Iran that they are the Hitler of the Middle East. And when pressed by, what do you mean? What do you mean? Mohammed bin Salman literally said, well, Hitler came into Europe and he destabilized the region. He had aggressive intentions, and those intentions were overlooked by a lot of so-called reasonable people in the 30s. And then next thing you know, Hitler overran all of Europe. The rest is history. It was not a pleasant time. And that's what we have here. We're at the, precipice. And he literally called it, he said the Middle East is, with Iran on stage, sort of in the 1930s, mid-1930s mindset. And I don't know. I mean, when the head of Saudi Arabia is starting to sound a lot like Bibi Netanyahu, my mind goes, and this is, by the way, this is well before the war started. This is from an interview months ago. When he starts to sound like Netanyahu, I'm going, well, the Saudis don't like Iran. Iraq, whatever. Jordan, certainly no fan of Iran. Now they've lost their traditional power base. Russia, supporter of Iran, yes, but arguably a little busy right now with their own problems. And so, what can Iran do against an alignment that involves the Saudis, the Jordanians, probably the Egyptians, and the Americans? I don't know. I think they're screwed. And the objective isn't a land war like we had under George W. Bush. This isn't a nation building, it's an F it up, degrade all the assets there, the military assets, defang, declaw this beast, and hope somewhere in the process, the brave opposition leaders, and there is a tremendous opposition, we know this, within Iran against the regime, hope they finish the regime off internally. Is that possible? Yeah, I think that's a lot more possible than Iran wiping Israel off the map. Because if they could wipe Israel off the map. They would have. They sent 150 rockets a night. And the big story is that 1, 2, or 3, it's terrible, 1, 2, or 3 get through the Iron Dome. I mean, I don't know how else to read it. All right, folks, that's the music. Be right back. The What's Right show will continue in a moment. Greetings, friends, and welcome to the What's Right show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m., right here on News Talk 840 KXNT. Sam at what'srightshow.com. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. Do reach out to me there if you have a comment, question, or concern. And of course, at What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. Click to follow. Once you find me there, you will not be too terribly disappointed. By the way, I had an interaction. Let me see if I can find this. I should have had this ready to go at my fingertips. But of course, lots going on here. Getting ready here for today's program, just very fluid situation. So I had a listener and a follower respond to me about something that was on X. And well, let me see. It had to do with Las Vegas. Here we go. There was a follower of mine. So, okay, so Vital Vegas, an account that follows sort of Las Vegas news, is run by a guy named Scott Robin. And I happen to know Scott personally. Scott put up a thing about this weekend, LVMPD weekend protest notice. Remember, Saturday was the No Kings protest. I'm going to cover it more a little bit later in the program, but suffice it to say, I have a building downtown in Las Vegas and was touch worried about this. So like many of you, nervous that things would get out of hand, which thanks to Metro, they did not. But on Friday, LVMPD posted this thing, basically saying, look, hey, we're committed to protecting everyone's constitutional right to protect peacefully, but, govern yourselves accordingly. Be safe out there. Don't do anything stupid. Don't bring violence. And Scott Robin posted up this thing, said, retweeted it essentially, or a screenshot of it, and said, they work for all of us. They don't get to turn off comments. I was like, oh. So I saw this before a listener, and he doesn't have his name here, but before the listener commented on this, and I said, oh, they did in fact turn off comments. Okay. And so a listener, and by the way, do email me because I would love to have a conversation with you about this. Still vouching for this liberal view. I believe it was this account that you vouched for a while back. Lots of lefty views. Going to unfollow seems to be a Dem platform lately, not just Vegas stuff. Now, I have never actually talked politics with Scott Robin, but I think Scott is actually a pretty liberal guy. I've been very transparent about this. Now, hear me out. I am still old enough to remember COVID. I'm still old enough. It's a joke, right? But it wasn't that long ago. We all remember when our city, our state, and our country were shut down. And we also remember a time where, as Vegas was dying, as people couldn't get their, we couldn't, Dieter couldn't get their act together here in Vegas. If you're not familiar with this, basically our entire system for unemployment collapsed. People's claims weren't being paid out. Meanwhile, our idiotic governor, Steve Sisolak, kept things shut down and was following the lead of Gavin Newsom in California. Now, Scott Robin was one of the only few people with a big voice and a big following that took a hard stand for reopening our city against Governor Sisolak. And I'll never forget that. So, sometimes if we can find common ground with people, on big things. And to me, COVID and the overreaction to it was always a big thing. You know, to me, that is valuable. But these are the kind of things, these are the kind of discussions that we can have on X, on Twitter. And so if you're not on there, you'll see these interactions and are able to, you know, join the conversation, even when I'm not on air. Sam@what'srightshow.com is my email, at What's Right Sam on X. Okay. Tucker Carlson getting a lot of heat. There is a disagreement within the MAGAsphere. There are two things that MAGA people are mad at Trump about. The first, I agree with. The second, I don't. Trump, in the last few days, came out with I'll start with number one. In the last few days, Trump came out with a change in policy. Now, he didn't announce it himself. It came by way of a memo that has not, to my knowledge yet, been refuted by anyone in the administration. And that memo said, basically, in sum, don't enforce ICE, right? DHS, don't enforce immigration actions against farms and some, industrial, companies, etc. Apparently, people in farming and in business have gotten to Trump say, you keep enforcing this, the economy is going to collapse. Now, maybe I'm unreasonable here. But folks, I'm prepared to burn it all down for the sake of getting rid of illegal immigration once and for all. And I think if we can't get rid of it now under Trump, it will never, ever happen. So I disagree, and I hope Trump hears those of us out who are critical of this change and does a U-turn, because I think you need to go out and enforce immigration laws, particularly against these bad actors who have built a business model around hiring cheap illegal labor. We cannot be a society that does anything other than that, okay? We just cannot allow it. So that was the one thing. The other thing, of course, is Iran, Israel, et al. The America First crowd thinks there should be no engagement, and the purists think that we shouldn't even sell weapons to Israel. Maybe sell, but certainly not provide, no military aid package, etc., etc. Now, I'll tell you where I'm at on this. I think Iran eventually, if empowered and being let alone for long enough, would have the means to attack the U.S. And I am deeply suspicious of Islamic fatalism. That's all it comes down to me. That's it. I don't think the Chinese are fatalists, right? As dangerous as China is, they will act rationally, because for the Chinese, self-preservation is key. When you have a government that is saturated in, based in, however you want to describe it, basically formed through radical Islam, well, then a core tenet of that belief system is it's better in the afterlife. The here and now doesn't matter. You've got 72 virgins, untold riches, happiness galore. Everything's perfect later. So if you just nuke it all and blast it to smithereens, well, who cares, This is why if somebody gave me a button to take the nuke away from Pakistan, I'd do it in a minute too. I don't think Islamic countries should have nukes. I don't. Because these are people who'd blow up the planet just for the sake of achieving nirvana. That's Just me being common sense. And you can just go, oh, America first. But your grandkids are going to end up vaporized. It's a matter of time. You can lull yourself into believing that the mullahs have their Swiss bank accounts and their riches and they're invested in living, etc. But I saw a story today. Explain to me why Israel has a relatively low death toll. And I think it's tough to get an exact number. Is it around 20? Is that where we're at? 10 people were killed over the weekend, maybe 14. Every death is a tragedy. These are minuscule numbers when you consider you have hypersonic ICBM missiles raining down on Tehran. Now, why? There's a shelter under every building. My principle, well, Sam, while you're on Team Israel, are you Jewish? No, I'm not Jewish. I don't know. I'm on the side of the people that believe in life. Israel believes in life. They believe in building bunkers for their people, making it safe, even in areas where there's high risk of war. The Iranians never built any bunkers, except, of course, for top leadership. Khomeini somewhere underground, hiding like a rat. But they don't have any bunkers in Iran. Why not? Well, because it's a cult of death. They worship death. They tell their people, hey, well, if you're, it's martyrdom. If an Israeli missile takes you out, Allah be with you. They're fatalistic and martyr focused. This scares me. So the extent to which we see to it here, I mean, we can isolate ourselves. I don't think we should go in and try to rebuild Iran. Furthest, boots on the ground, hell no. But providing military support to an ally, Israel, and seeing to it that they do our dirty work and take out an adversary, certainly somebody who would seek to do harm to the U.S., to me seems like a no-brainer. So that's where I have split with MAGA. Now that I've set the stage, I'll play for you a clip here. I got to take a break, but Tucker Carlson is backpedaling a little bit. Well, backpedaling. He is trying to soften this blowback because he is getting a tremendous amount of response to his schism with Trump, because he's basically said Trump is stabbing America first in the back. All right, quick break. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right. Well, after Tucker got all on America first and saying Trump isn't America first, Trump came back with his own rebuke. Did you hear this? Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. What do you think it would be that Trump would say to something like that? I thought this was Robbie, I thought this was a great response. Trump says, I came up with America first. I get to define what it is. Like, can you all just shut up and let me do my thing? What Trump said. Now, I'm of the opinion that if Israel cleans this up, we support them with military aid and whatnot, and Iran ends up becoming a free country, the Shah returns, an ally of the U.S., all this happens. If that's possible, as all this talk, the schism over America first is in the rear window. The immigration problem for Trump will be far bigger, okay? He has to stay true to that. It's a core promise. Okay, but I don't want to get off topic. So Tucker gives this interview after this whole kerfuffle unfolded, and this was well, this was on War Room, today, and it was just earlier this morning. So let me get this. This was Steve Bannon. Listen to what Tucker says.
Whether or not you believe in Christianity, whether or not you're a Christian, it doesn't matter. It is true that people who espouse violence suffer in the end. They do. I have seen it a lot. And I grew up in a world that espoused violence. That's what the U.S. government does. My dad was involved in it. And I just believe that. And maybe you don't believe that. That's fine. That is my core belief. I sincerely think that. But why the hate towards someone who's just like, hey, I'm hard. If you think, and I said this to an Israeli official, if you think I'm anti-Israel, man, you have lost the plot, son. If you think I'm your enemy, not at all. I like Israel. Are you kidding? I've spent a lot of time there. I continue to like it. I pray that Jerusalem is not damaged. I feel so sad for the Israelis who've been killed in the last couple of days and the Iranians who've been killed in the last couple of days, who had nothing to do with any of this. But the point is, if you think that saying, hey, let's focus on my country where I was born, where my family's been for hundreds of years, that was the promise of the last election, please do it. If you think that's hate, you've really lost perspective, I guess is what I would say.
This is a soft review because, of course, I don't like when Lindsey Graham goes, game on, mother effers. He didn't say mother effers, but he wrote literally a tweet, game on, when Israel launched its attack. I always like to frame war, and what war would I be okay with my son dying in? I have a 17-year-old. So I'm with Tucker on that part of it. Obviously, there is some war, for example, if the U.S. were attacked, where the right thing, the existentially important thing would be to fight. You're defending everything you have. You take your chances on that. But there's some middle ground. We get so hung up on black and white. Oh, nothing for Israel. Okay, we're just whatever you want to do, whatever. We're out to boots on the ground. And on this subject, I'm very much aligned with what Bibi Netanyahu says here, because he addressed this in an interview, and this was today on ABC. And there's one particular thing that he said that I think is very sound.
It's Tel Aviv. Tomorrow it's New York. I understand America first. I don't understand America dead. That's what these people want. They chant death to America. So we're doing something that is in the service of mankind, of humanity, and it's a battle of good against evil. America should and does stand with the good. That's what President Trump is doing, and I deeply appreciate his support.
Perfect. I don't know. I tend to agree with him based on my own assessment of what these mullahs are like. It's one thing when they do not have the capacity to strike us. It is another thing if this program of theirs is allowed to continue to unfold. And by the way, I'll tell you exactly what Iran would use their nuke for. The Iranians would provide the technology to a proxy actor, to a terrorist group. The Houthis, Hezbollah, whatever the acronym, ISIS, whoever would be willing to do their dirty work, they would provide them with a bomb. The terrorists would go to New York, detonate the nuclear device. Consequences, of course, would be devastating. Iran would sit there going, not us. And what does it matter at that point? Can we attack Iran and do to them what we did to Afghanistan for harboring al-Qaeda? Probably not, because at this point they have a nuclear weapon, right? These are the questions that I ask myself, right? Is this conflict worth it? So I always, what I love, and I said this last week, so important. Within our movement, we have disagreements. I'm not always aligned with every person 100% of the time. I can't just say, because I agree with Tucker on so much, I agree with him mindlessly on this one thing. And based on the emails that I get from many of you, it's clear that you don't always agree with me. And I love that. If you always agree with somebody 100% of the time,
It's Tel Aviv, tomorrow it's New York.
well, maybe you found your soulmate. And if I am that to you, then I'm deeply
That's
honored.
what these people want. They
But it's
chant
okay.
death to America.
We
So we're
conservatives,
doing
we
something
think
that
for
is in the service
ourselves.
of
We don't
mankind,
think
of
with our
humanity,
emotions.
And it's a battle
We're
of
not
good
like the
against
left.
evil.
We're
America
different.
does, should, and does
Speaking of
stand
that,
with
I
the
want to
good.
get into the
That's what
shooting in
President
Minnesota.
Trump is
Absolute
doing,
tragedy.
And I deeply appreciate his
We'll deal with
support.
that next. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Friends, welcome to the What's Right show, powered by Sam and Ash Injury Law, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. Sam Mirejovsky here, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. My email, sam@what'srightshow.com, on X, formerly known as Twitter, @what'srightsam. We'll take a break here, a brief pause, talking about the Middle Eastern conflict to discuss, if I can, this horrific shooting in Minnesota. So Saturday, June 14th at 2 in the morning, a man named Vance Boetler, allegedly disguised as a police officer, shot a senator, a state senator, and his wife in Champlin, Minnesota. Now, Senator Hoffman and his wife so far have survived after their surgeries around 3:30 that same morning. So basically middle of the night, Boetler fatally shot, allegedly, Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark, this in a different city called Brooklyn Park. Now, at this point, the police show up. He exchanges gunfire and flees the scene. He leaves a manifesto behind and no King's flyers in his vehicle. Later that morning, Butler's wife, Jenny, is detained during a traffic stop. Somewhere again in a place called Onamia, with weapons, ammunition, cash, and passports. Police officers detained her, but she's later released. And then yesterday afternoon, SWAT teams raid this guy's Camden residence. Manhunt intensifies. Let's see, Sunday early morning, this guy is found. He's spotted on a trail, is arrested, and it ends basically a 43-hour manhunt. Now, I'll tell you, here is what I think is the interesting issue here. What are this guy's reasons for going out and targeting these two lawmakers? They're both Democrats. I think kind of in the immediate aftermath of this event, a lot of leftists out there, see, Republicans gone amok, and then found out that this guy worked for Tim Walz. This was absolutely crazy. He was appointed by Tim Walz to some commission. And his wife was Tim Walz's on his staff in Washington when Tim Walz was a congressman. So these people have long established connections to the Minnesota Democratic Party, and specifically to Tim Walz himself. Now, there's some video of this guy sounding very religious and very conservative. People have described Boetler as holding deeply religious and conservative views. There's a recording of him in 2022. A sermon he gave in Africa. He criticized American morality, criticized abortion, sexual orientation, and seem to be aligned with evangelical and conservative ideologies. Now, here's another thing, right? A guy left a manifesto in his car. So he had the No Kings flyers. I don't know what to make of that other than, maybe that's designed to thwart things. But then you have a manifesto. And, well, I'm just, the manifesto is interesting because they aren't releasing it. They're holding on to it. And the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Superintendent Drew Evans, who's kind of the top cop there, held a press conference the other day and addressed the document saying, quote, "It's not a manifesto in the traditional sense, like a political screed. It's more of a notebook with lists of names and some thoughts, but it lacks specifics that would clarify a clear motive." Well, the acting U.S. Attorney, Joe Thompson, wrote a statement and said, quote, "The written materials found do not constitute a cohesive ideological statement. Disclosing them now would not serve the public interest and could complicate ongoing investigative efforts." So we're not allowed to see the manifesto because what? It has too little information? I mean, I don't get it. To me, none of it adds up. And the weirdest thing is this guy's roommate. It's a fat slob named David Carlson who was seen basically breaking down in tears reading a text from his supposed friend. Now, this is, I'm going to play this here because I don't know. What do you make of this? Here's a text. Again, let me play the video because it seems, I mean, if you're going to take it at face value, that this guy knew the guy pretty well. So have a listen.
Dead shortly. So I just want to let you know that I love you guys both, and I wish it hadn't gone this way. I don't want to say anything more and implicate you in any way because you guys don't know anything about this. But I love you guys, and I'm sorry for all the trouble this has caused. He was a loving, caring guy, loved his family, loved his friends, and loved God, and I don't know why he did what he did. It's not Vance. No one will believe this.
It's not Vance. No one will believe this. So here's what I have trouble believing. So this David Carlson, supposedly a roommate of this guy's, but okay, like this guy works as a supervisor of the alleged shooter, right? Boetler works as a supervisor at a security company, probably making a pretty decent living in that role. Minnesota, not a particularly expensive place, so his wife is working. He's got 5 kids. I mean, hear me out. Don't you think it's a little bit odd that a guy that has 5 kids, a wife, is allegedly kind of a traditional guy, has a roommate living inside the house with girls? 4 daughters. Faith, Hope, Grace, and Charity are their names, right? I looked at this. And I have 2 daughters. Let me tell you something. I probably would not let just some guy, no matter how well I knew him, live with us as a roommate. It's just not a good idea. Okay? And if I have to explain that, I'm not going to, but I think you can read between the lines. It just doesn't seem like the right thing. Now, what we also know is that there was a contentious vote preceding this. On June 9th, not even a week before this occurred, there was a debate about a bill in the Minnesota House. And the bill was centered around ending undocumented adult immigrants' eligibility for state Medicare funds. And it passed the House 68 to 65. And the lone Democrat vote came from Melissa Hortman, who was the lawmaker who, together with her husband, was murdered. She's the one who died. So we have this contentious vote centered around illegal immigration. If you look at media reports around the time of all this happening, there is no doubt that Melissa Hortman's name is everywhere. I mean, she is everywhere. And there was talk of her leaving the Democratic Party over this. So we're led to believe that this guy who was a major Trump supporter went and killed what? The one Democrat that stuck it to Tim Walz and stuck it to the Democrats and bucked her party, and he shot her in the face? I don't think so. It just doesn't add up to me. Now, I'm having trouble verifying this. Apparently, some have reported that Hoffman did vote for the repeal. Some people are saying he voted against it. Regardless, the bill passed the Senate 37 to 30, with other senators, Democratic senators, Aaron Murphy, Ann Rest, Grant Hochschild, and Robert Kupets being part of it. Don't know if they were also on the hit list. Maybe the assassin didn't thought that this guy was on the list of people that had betrayed the party. So to me, I'm not going to believe much of anything I hear about this because it just doesn't add up, as far as I'm concerned. Well, and then by the way, everybody's asking about the murder too. How is it possible that this guy's been charged with second-degree murder and not first-degree murder? And I'll explain that. I got to take a quick break. We'll touch on that when we return. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
The Sam and Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings, friends. Welcome back. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam and Ash Injury Law, 702-820-1234, because you deserve what's right. This whole shooting doesn't add up to me in Minnesota. And, well, I was mentioning the roommate. So Vance Boetler, the alleged shooter who killed Democratic lawmaker and her husband and targeted another lawmaker and his wife, was apprehended over the weekend. And now, obviously, the investigative portion of the case gets into full steam. By the way, the criminal complaint right now alleges 2 counts of second-degree murder. That is designed for the intent and purpose of securing the indictment and seeing to it that it holds. These charges could be upgraded later as more evidence comes available. Second-degree murder is murder without malice aforethought, which is a fancy way we lawyers have we call them premeditation. And you're probably thinking, well, Sam, there's nothing more premeditated than putting on a Halloween mask. Because if you've seen the videos, this guy had some sort of mask on, right? Showing up in the wee hours of the morning specifically to kill somebody. And the answer to that is, well, yes, but you want this indictment to hold up. You want the judge when you're facing these charges to be, be on your side as the prosecutor. So the inclination is to undercharge. And I would be surprised if these charges later do not get upgraded to first-degree murder. But, of course, I'm not familiar with this jurisdiction and what the prosecutor likes to do. Now, here is the roommate. I think it's weird that this guy had a roommate, was living apparently with his wife and kids. He has 4 daughters and 1 son. I, as the father of 2 girls, 12 and 14, would not invite a male boarder into my home. Just saying, no matter how great of a guy he was or how large his Papa John's shirt might be. So here is the roommate. Remember, I played the clip just before the break of the roommate here. Oh, I got a text from Vance. Okay, right? And read the text message where he basically says, oh, yeah, whatever. So now the media says, well, we'd like to see the text. Can we take a photo of it?
Well, he said that he made some choices. And he said, you guys don't know anything about it, but yeah. So. That's what he said. He didn't have much time to live.
Another big ass. Do you mind if I take a picture of the text message?
Nah,
I can block out his number.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I kind of keep that private because I read it to people, and I don't know. I just got to get going.
I just got to get going. I came out and said this guy was a huge Trump supporter. I came out to say he was a right-wing nut. I came out to say that this was politically motivated. I got to get going. No, you can't see the text. I got to go. This is weird. Now, can I give you an alternative theory? And I say this as a lawyer. Do you know what the most dangerous work in law is? And I'll give you a hint. It ain't working for the mafia, because I know lawyers who've represented organized criminals, and actually, by and large, they claim these are great clients. Well, ask Oscar Goodman, okay? Oscar will tell you, our former mayor and lawyer extraordinaire, who is, I think ought to be declared the patron saint of Las Vegas. Oscar will tell you how great, his clients, his mafioso clients were. So it's not the mafia. If you're not, you're a criminal defense attorney, that's not going to be the problem. It's family law. Correctamundo. And we had a horrific shooting in Las Vegas. Dennis Prince, if you'll recall, up in Summerlin, less than a year ago. He was handling his own, basically his wife's custody case. And the kids, the ex's grandfather shot and killed him and his wife. You remember this saga, right? Custody battle. Okay. If, in fact, this Boetler guy was rooming with this Hevelump, this unwashed Hevelump that you just saw on in the clip, maybe it's because him and the wife were on the rocks. And if him and the wife were on the rocks, now we're talking about somebody who is not in a good place. Okay? Let me give you another idea. Suppose for a minute this guy who's been working in politics forever is Boetler, right? He's a political guy. His wife is a political guy, a person, right? Woman. They all know everybody inside that Democratic Minnesota establishment. Now they're going through a divorce. They have friends. Let's say some of the friends take the wife's side. Now this guy already is a screw loose. He's a nut. And he decides, I'm going to go in and I'm going to go guns blazing, and I'm going to go after my political, not my political enemy, excuse me, my opponent, people who are keeping me away from my children. And then as an added twist, he decides, well, you know what? I'm going to go in. I'm going to tell everybody I'm a Trump guy. So the Republicans get blamed. And he was hoping he was going to go out in a blaze of bullets or something. I don't know. Well, there's all this video of Walt saying he's friends with this guy. Well, we're supposed to disregard that? That disappeared. It's just a working theory. I'm just telling you, I'm providing, what is this? Reasonable doubt. And sometimes we lawyers, we spin a story. I'm not saying this is how it's going to be. I'm offering you alternative perspectives to let you know that what you think right now might be the case, it could be something completely different. Okay? Just expand your view. That's all I'm trying to do. Moving around the frame a bit. Okay. Let's take a quick break. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT, media bias and the war up next. This will blow your mind. No question about it. Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. Sam at what'srightshow.com. And of course, on X, you can find me at What's Right Sam. So I have to play this. The Iranians are not having a great day. The regime, I think, is not looking too good. By the way, they're trying to keep a positive spin on things, which became a little bit difficult today in the wee hours of the morning, our time, when the Iranian state broadcaster was targeted in the middle of their broadcast. Now, I don't really particularly care what this burqa-clad woman broadcaster had to say, but it's very evident that it was interrupted by Israeli jets.
آنچه که ملاحظه کردید، صدایی که شنیدید، فضای غبارآلوده استودیو
Well, look, it's a state broadcaster. It's a legitimate target. This is propaganda coming out. It's a war. Am I making light of it? Well, a little bit. I mean, you would think, again, that the Iranians would have their main broadcast studio secured. To me, the flimsiness of this entire regime is glaring. I mean, can you imagine, just hypothetically here, Israel has refused. Israel has buttloads of ICBM missiles. Israel could indiscriminately bomb Tehran into the Stone Age. And no, Iran would not have the required missile defense systems like Israel does, like Iron Dome, to prevent that from happening. But Israel is looking to do targeted strikes. They do not want to lose the Iranian population. They're very targeted, okay, in what they're so at great risk, with great planning and great care, and obviously high tech from America. They are, going in and being precise. And this is, by the way, my answer to the Tucker Carlsons of the world. That say, well, we shouldn't give anything. We shouldn't help them. We shouldn't help. If we give Israel our precision weapons, do you realize how many lives, Iranian lives, human lives, that saves? Right? I mean, think about it in those terms, because I don't. The clip I played of Tucker at the top of the hour, it doesn't offend me, right, per se. A war is awful, and we shouldn't celebrate war and killing, arbitrarily for the sake of it. But my father, I grew up with these stories. My father was born in 1941 in in German-occupied Czechoslovakia. And so by 1945, my daughter was my son was my father was a 4-year-old kid, and he remembers Allied bombing of Prague, and certainly for my grandparents, they have vivid memories of this. Right, they were adults. Having your city bombed is not good, and I think a lot of Americans probably don't have a family member who'd had their city bombed, aerial bombing, right? We just don't know this. We don't grow up around it. So I have sensitivity to it, but at the same time, again, this was a targeted strike, deliberate strike, mid-broadcast, and it is the first time. The Mossad is very happy about this. The first time since the Islamic Revolution that the state broadcaster has gone off air. So, yeah, things are not good over there. Now, I mentioned a little bit about the reporting, and there's a little bit of information that came out that I want to share with you, because this is this was a reporter, an AP reporter, Maddie Friedman, talking about how the Associated Press has submitted to Hamas censorship. And by the way, this is true for Iran as well. This is how the mainstream media operate, how they take basically Hamas, what Hamas says, and regurgitate it, and how afraid they are of Hamas. And that one time, this guy, basically put out a story that was fully accurate, and it got retracted. So have a listen. This is important to know when you read the New York Times, or you hear a citation to a death number in Gaza, and you realize that it's all Hamas propaganda, that we are essentially, Western media is no different than that woman there that got her studio bombed mid-broadcast.
As far as I know, I was the first staffer to erase information from a story because we were threatened by Hamas, which happened at the very end of 2008. We had a great reporter in Gaza, a Palestinian, who had always been really an excellent reporter. We had a detail in a story. The detail was a crucial one. It was that Hamas fighters were dressed as civilians and were being counted as civilians in the death toll. An important thing to know, that went out in an AP story. The reporter called me a few hours later. It was clear that someone had spoken to him. And he told me, I was on the desk in Jerusalem, so I was kind of writing the story from the main bureau in Jerusalem. And he said, Mati, you have to take that detail out of the story. And it was clear that someone had threatened him. I took the detail out of the story. I suggested to our editors that we note in an editor's note that we were now complying with Hamas censorship. I was overruled. And from that point in time, the AP, like all of its sister organizations, collaborates with Hamas censorship in Gaza. What does that mean? You'll see a lot of dead civilians, and you won't see dead militants. You won't have a clear idea of what the Hamas military strategy is. And this is the kicker, the center of the coverage will be a casualty number that is provided to the press by something called the Gaza Health Ministry, which is Hamas. And we've been doing that since 2008. And it's a way of basically settling the story before you get into any other information.
It's exactly what's going on, right? How many leftists during these protests against Israel will say, all I need to know is that there were 50,000, Hamas children that were killed, Palestinian kids that were killed. That's all I need to know. That's all you need to know. The numbers are BS, right? You have these propagandists literally putting up, as I mentioned last hour, videos of Jews hiding F-35 fighter jets in residential condominium towers with a Star Destroyer in the basement. And yeah, and it's propaganda, right? And people are, that is an extreme example, of course. But these are the same people that lie about things that are perhaps more believable, or at the very least are more difficult to disprove. And they do it all the time. Matt Friedman continues explaining how Hamas has successfully intimidated reporters.
When you put, when you say 50 Palestinians were killed and 1 Israeli on a given day, it doesn't matter what else you say. The numbers kind of tell their own story, and it's a way of kind of settling the story with something that sounds like a concrete statistic, and the statistic is being, given to us by one of the combatant sides. But because the reporters sympathize with that side, they're happy to play along. So since 2008, certainly since 2014, when we had another serious war in Gaza, the press has not been covering in Gaza. The press has been essentially an amplifier for one of the most poisonous ideologies on earth. Hamas has figured out how to make the press amplify its messaging rather than covering Hamas. There are no Western reporters in Gaza. All of the reporters in Gaza are Palestinians, and those people fall into 3 categories. Some of them identify with Hamas. Some of them are intimidated by Hamas and won't cross Hamas, which makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't want to cross Hamas either. And the third category is people who actually belong to Hamas.
Yeah. So basically, nobody wants to contradict Hamas because they're using terrorism and the threat of death to intimidate journalists and or relying simply on biases that the journalists have. So here you had one reporter who wanted to write a story, and it was an accurate story. It was well researched, and he had a source. And the AP changed it either due to inclinations of sympathy, or simply for the reason that they were afraid that Hamas was going to come after them. None of these numbers are real. And I'm sharing this now because, of course, the conflict in Gaza continues, and at the same time, you have the war with Iran, and we're going to see these kind of reports in the news, casualty figures, downplaying what is going on in Tel Aviv and in Haifa and in Jerusalem, and certainly upselling and exaggerating the loss of life in Iran. But the difference between Iran and Gaza is I do know, and because I have grew up with so many Iranians in Southern California particularly, and I know they have family there, that there is some significant body of Iranians that are dying to be rid of this murderous regime, and they have in them the ability to forge a new society and a new state that is far more secular than the current Islamic Republic. So that's a fact, and but this enforced messaging, I got to tell you, this is crazy. Go back, remember the Gaza encampments? They did this. Here, I'm playing it real quick before the break. This is crazy. The encampments, the Gaza encampment, look at how they like to, the Hamas people, even in the U.S., like to control the message. So here's a TV grab of the encampment, the Hamas encampment at Columbia University. Reporter says, I'll talk to somebody after my live shot is done. You don't have permission. It's not appropriate. The Hamas person saying. We will have people talk to you in the front, but not here.
No, that's not what works. They're already up there.
No, can't do it. Not here. You have to move. You can't film here.
There's a bunch of people in yellow vests, and they'll tell you.
Go to the yellow vest people. Go to the propagandists. Yeah, this is the Hamas people, okay? They're in the commons of public area that these a-holes have occupied, right? See how it works? Budding little communist Hamas sympathizers. Yes, that's what we have here in the U.S. And yes, Trump should deport all of them. Well, by the way, let me talk about immigration. I'll put a finer point on it when we return. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT. The What's Right Show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Greetings, friends. Welcome back. The No Kings protest, obviously here in Vegas, relatively peaceful, thank goodness. Nearby in Salt Lake City, they had a shooting there. A gentleman named Arturo Roberto Gamboa. I guess he was, they called him a peacekeeper there. Allegedly killed a bystander, Arthur Alu. 8,000 people there, 8,000 people here in Las Vegas. Assaults and other incidents all across the country. Los Angeles got out of hand. Portland got out of hand. Atlanta, Georgia, tear gas was deployed. Even in Newport Beach, California, all 12 lesbians known to be living in the city limits came out with their signs to protest. Fun fact that I've just completely made up. Okay. So I had to protect the building. I got extra security. I mean, this is a pain. If there was, let me put it to you this way. When we talk about right-wing violence, left-wing violence, okay? Can we talk about that for a minute? If there was a MAGA protest downtown, I would not have to hire extra security for my building. There. If I had a Obama for president sticker, or Kamala or Gavin Newsom with a little rainbow and a little heart and some Disney ears on my car, okay? Would I be worried parking it in an Alabama parking lot somewhere? No, they're going to make fun of me. They're not going to smash my car to smithereens. Now, if I put a I love Trump sticker and I park it in San Francisco, my car's done. Right? This is the real talk. If you talk to a liberal about this, they will admit it privately that that's true. They know. So that's the conversation about the violence. Now, immigration, obviously, one of the things that were being protested, even though this was a hashtag No Kings protest, which, of course, the left missed the fact that the July 4th holiday is our actual No Kings protest. We don't have a king. Trump is not a king, all this stuff, right? Ha, ha, ha. Okay. But the immigration topic, there were a lot of ICE signs that I saw everywhere. And funny enough, the subject of immigration, Trump is facing, in my view, the biggest mistake that he will ever make in his presidency if he goes soft on immigration. Because, and I touched on it earlier, I mentioned that MAGA right now is experiencing some internecine battles. One is on the subject of Iran and engagement in the fight, in the war between Iran and Israel. But the other one has to do with immigration, and that's Trump's stand down, it seems, over enforcing immigration enforcement in large factories and farms. Now, Trump, for his part, on Sunday, put out a giant post on Truth Social, instructing ICE officers to go in and achieve mass deportation programs. He's talking about largest cities, Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. I don't see something here about the farms. And the reason is, look, I'll tell you, and I'm glad it's happening in LA. I'm glad it's happening in blue cities, blue states, and sanctuary jurisdictions. But one thing that I just want to be clear. Yeah, you have to understand the absurdity of the liberal position. The current dogma if you will, if you reduce all the word vomit that you saw over the weekend in these anti-ICE Snow Kings protests, it comes down to this. These are people that think we ought to double, triple, quadruple the minimum wage. We ought to have a minimum wage that is $35 an hour. But at the same time, we really need to sneak into the country 10 to 20 to 30 million people to do the real work for about $5 an hour. You know, to me, illegal immigration is akin to being in favor of modern day slavery. And this is the same people that claim that minimum wage is not a livable wage, that it ought to be double, it ought to be triple, right? And what has to happen here, if you are going to hear me out, is really what we should do is do away with the minimum wage and at the same time cancel illegal immigration. And we ought to force employers to pay people a livable wage because they won't be able to get people to work for them unless the pay is adequate. That's what would happen if Trump just keeps going at this and not give into powerful voices who no doubt are targeting him and the administration daily with desperate pleas for them to keep their cheap slave labor. This is a big deal for me, and it's a place where I certainly could separate from Trump. All right, Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT.